The selfie I sent from Heathrow Airport on a wet Saturday morning in March wasn't staged. I didn't think about framing it. I didn't rehearse a caption. I just stood in Terminal 5 with my carry-on at my feet and my boarding pass folded in my jacket pocket. And when her text came through asking what I was doing that weekend, I turned the camera around, smiled, and hit send. No caption, no explanation, just the photo. Her response took 11 minutes. 11 minutes of me standing near Gate B22 drinking bad airport coffee from a paper cup that was already going soft at the seam. When her reply finally appeared on my screen, it was 3 words. Are you serious? I typed back 2. Dead serious. Then I put my phone in my jacket pocket, picked up my carry-on, and walked onto that flight without looking back once. My name is Eli Navar. I'm 36 years old. I'm a software architect for a mid-sized tech company headquartered in Bellevue, Washington, about 12 minutes across Lake Washington from Seattle on a clear morning. I design distributed systems infrastructure for a living, which means I spend most of my professional hours thinking about how to build things that don't collapse under pressure. It turns out that skill doesn't transfer to relationships as neatly as you'd hope. I want to tell you about the last 2 years of my life, about what I gave up, what I held on to when I should have let go, and the single conversation that changed the entire trajectory of where I was headed. The conversation where Jordana said words she probably thought would put me back in my place and close the argument. She had absolutely no idea she'd just handed me permission to leave. Before I get into the full story, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. We tell real stories about real decisions with real consequences. And if this one is already hitting close to home, drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my position. I read every single one. Now let's get into it. I met Jordana Reyes at a mutual friend's housewarming party in Capitol Hill in the fall of 2 years ago. She was standing near the kitchen island holding a glass of red wine. She wasn't actually drinking, looking mildly entertained by a conversation happening across the room that she clearly didn't feel the need to join. She had dark hair, sharp, observant eyes, and the kind of stillness about her that made you think she was the most interesting person at any gathering she walked into. She was a UX designer, freelance, mostly for healthcare technology companies. Smart, specialized work, and she was genuinely gifted at it. She had this ability to walk into a product and immediately identify exactly where the engineers had built for themselves instead of for the actual human beings who'd have to use it. I respected that instinct deeply. I still do. We talked for nearly 3 hours at that party, exchanged numbers, texted back and forth for 2 weeks before our first real date, which was coffee at Victrola on Pike Street, followed by a walk along the waterfront that stretched until the temperature dropped far enough that we had to admit the conversation was worth continuing somewhere indoors. We ended up at a Thai place on Broadway and talked until the staff started stacking chairs on the surrounding tables. By month 4, she'd left a toothbrush at my apartment in Belltown. By month 8, she was splitting her time between my place and her rental in the Central District. By month 12, we'd had the official conversation about looking for something together, one place, both our names on the lease, a real shared life. I was happy. Fully, genuinely, unreservedly happy, which is maybe exactly why I didn't register the early signs clearly enough. Cormac Sullivan entered the picture around the 14-month mark, though I didn't know his name yet at that point. I knew him as Jordana's ex, the one she mentioned occasionally in the careful, deflecting way that people mention significant things they're hoping you won't examine too closely. They dated for 2 years before me. Ended it, she said, because they wanted different things from life. He'd moved to Portland after the breakup. They'd stayed friendly. Friendly. That single word has done more damage to more relationships than any act of outright betrayal I have ever witnessed. The first time I knew Cormac was back in Seattle was a Thursday evening when I came home from the Bellevue office to find Jordana already dressed for dinner and not with me. She was wearing the emerald green wrap dress she reserved for occasions she privately considered important. Cormac's in town for a work project, she said, applying lipstick in the bathroom mirror without turning around. I'm going to grab dinner with him. Just catch up. I leaned against the doorframe. How long has he been in town? He got in today. She capped the lipstick. I won't be late. I said fine. Because it was fine. One dinner. Old friends catching up. That's a normal thing that happens between normal adults in normal friendships. She got home at 12:15 in the morning, which was also, in isolation, fine. But here's the thing you need to understand about me. I am not, by temperament, an anxious person. I don't spiral. I don't build conspiracy theories out of coincidences. I work in systems design, which means I solve problems through evidence, pattern recognition, and conclusions drawn only when the data actually supports them. The data started accumulating slowly. Cormac's work project in Seattle, which was supposed to run 2 weeks, stretched into a month, then 2 months. I started hearing his name in sentences that had nothing to do with me. Cormac thinks the new album is overrated. Cormac and I went to the farmer's market on Sunday. Cormac says hi, he thinks you seem cool. He had never once met me. By month 3 of Cormac's extended Seattle stay, the pattern had solidified into something I genuinely could not keep explaining away. Jordana was seeing him every single weekend. Not occasionally, not incidentally, not when schedules happened to align. Every weekend, at minimum once, frequently twice. Saturday afternoons at Volunteer Park. Sunday brunch at Oddfellows on Capitol Hill. Walks around Green Lake that she described warmly as good exercise and good company. She always told me. I want to be precise about that. She wasn't concealing these plans. She mentioned them the same way you'd mention stopping to pick up groceries. I'm meeting Cormac for coffee Saturday morning. Cormac got Sounders tickets. I'm going with him Sunday afternoon. As if I should find this unremarkable. I tried the direct approach. We were making dinner at home on a Wednesday evening, chicken pasta I was cooking while Jordana was theoretically helping but was mostly sitting on the kitchen counter on her phone. I set down the wooden spoon and asked her, as calmly as I could manage, whether she thought the amount of time she was spending with Cormac was appropriate given that we were in a committed relationship. She looked up from her phone. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm wondering if this is still about catching up. Eli. She set the phone face down on the counter. Cormac and I have been close for years. Longer than we were actually together, if you think about it. I'm not going to end a friendship because you're insecure about it. Insecure. That word landed the way she intended it to. She knew it would. She was very precise with language. I'm not insecure, I said. I'm observant. Those aren't the same thing. You're manufacturing something out of nothing. I let it go, because I loved her, and because part of me wanted badly to believe I was wrong. I called my mom, Patrice, that weekend. She lives in Tacoma, about 30 minutes south of Seattle, on a typical day, in the same house on South 12th Street she's been in since I was in high school. She's a retired English teacher with the rare ability to hear exactly what you aren't saying. Tell me what your gut is telling you, she said. Not what Jordana said. Not what I thought I should think. What my gut was telling me. My gut was telling me this wasn't nothing. Then pay attention to it, Patrice said simply, and pay close attention to her. I paid attention. What I noticed over the following 4 weeks, Jordana became slightly harder to reach on weekend mornings. Not unreachable, but delayed. Texts that used to come back in minutes sat unanswered for an hour or more. She started leaving the apartment earlier on Saturdays and returning later in the afternoons. She stopped mentioning Cormac's name as freely, which paradoxically made his presence more noticeable, not less. And in the evenings, she was more emotionally distant. Not cold exactly. More like someone living with one foot in another room. Present physically, but partially somewhere else. I was running very low on ways to tell myself this was nothing. The conversation happened on a Sunday afternoon in February. It had been raining all day. The steady, relentless, undramatic Seattle rain that doesn't announce itself. It just settles in and stays. Jordana had been out since mid-morning, and when she came home just after 2 o'clock, she had that particular quality she always had after time with Cormac. Lighter. Animated. Like she'd been somewhere that refueled something in her that our apartment no longer reached. I was at my desk working on a systems architecture diagram I'd been putting off for 8 days. I heard the front door. Heard her keys drop into the bowl by the entrance. Heard her heels on the hardwood floor. Hey, she said from the hallway. Hey. I didn't turn around. How was your morning? Really good, actually. We walked around Eastlake. Found this little bakery on Eastlake Avenue East we'd never noticed before. Their almond croissants are genuinely incredible. We. I registered the pronoun. Who runs the bakery? I asked it lightly. She paused half a beat. Cormac and I went. Right. I saved my work, turned my chair around. Jordana, I need to have a real conversation with you. She was still standing in the living room doorway with her jacket on, one hand in her pocket. Something shifted in her expression. Not guilt precisely, more like preparation. Like a person bracing for a conversation they've been half expecting. I've been patient about this, I said carefully. I've genuinely tried not to be the kind of partner who makes demands about who you spend your time with. But we've reached a point where you're spending more weekend time with Cormac than you are with me, and I have to be honest with you about how that lands. Eli, let me finish. I wasn't raising my voice. I was choosing every word the way I'd choose a load-bearing component in a system build. Nothing careless, nothing extraneous. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I'm experiencing, and I'm asking you to be honest with me about what's actually happening between you two. Jordana crossed her arms. Something hardened in her face. Not defensiveness exactly, more like a door swinging shut. Nothing is happening, she said. Cormac is my friend. He has always been my friend. I'm not going to stand here and justify a friendship to you every time you feel threatened by it. There was that word again. Threatened. She had a whole vocabulary designed to reframe my legitimate concerns as personal inadequacies. I'm not asking you to justify it, I said. I'm asking you to consider whether what you're doing is fair to us. What I'm doing, she repeated, and her voice carried a distinct edge now, is maintaining a friendship with someone I care about. And if you can't trust me to do that without turning it into a crisis, then maybe we have a much bigger problem than Cormac. I looked at her steadily. What kind of bigger problem? She held my gaze without flinching. If you don't trust me hanging out with my ex every weekend, maybe we shouldn't be together. I have replayed that sentence many times since that afternoon. The specific architecture of it. She didn't say she was sorry I felt that way. She didn't say she'd reflect on it. She issued an ultimatum disguised as a reasonable observation, designed to make me back down, apologize for being unreasonable, reaffirm that yes, of course I trusted her, and spend the rest of the evening pretending the conversation had never happened. Here's what she didn't know. 3 weeks earlier, I had received an email from my director, Harwick Bale. Harwick was a British systems engineering executive, sharp and straight-talking, who had been headhunted to run our company's London expansion out of a new office in Canary Wharf. He and I had collaborated remotely on a distributed systems project for the better part of 6 months, and he had apparently concluded that I was precisely the kind of principal architect he wanted on the ground in London, building out the technical foundation from scratch. The email was detailed, generous, and genuinely flattering. It offered a senior principal architect title, a meaningful compensation increase, significant equity in the London expansion, the chance to hire and build an entire technical team in a city I had always wanted to live in. I had declined it 2 weeks after receiving it. The reason I had declined was standing across the room from me with her arms folded, telling me that maybe we shouldn't be together. I looked at Jordana for a long, quiet moment. I thought about the past 18 months, the green dress, the farmer's market. Cormac says hi, he thinks you seem cool. The bakery on Eastlake Avenue East with the incredible almond croissants. And I thought about Harwick's email, which I had not deleted, which was sitting in a folder, waiting. You're absolutely right, I said. She blinked. What? You're right. If I can't trust you, we shouldn't be together. I stood up from my desk chair. My voice was completely level, steadier than I expected it to be. I think that's a fair conclusion. Jordana stared at me. The conversation had gone somewhere her script hadn't prepared for. Eli, I didn't mean... I know what you meant, I said. And I think we both need some time to sit with this. I went to the bedroom, closed the door quietly behind me, and opened my laptop. I found Harwick's email. I wrote a reply in under 2 minutes. Harwick, my circumstances have changed. If the London role is still available, I'm in. Let me know what the timeline looks like and what you need from me. I hit send, put the laptop on the nightstand, lay back and looked at the ceiling. He replied in 4 minutes. It was after midnight in London and he was apparently still at his desk. The role was still open. They'd been slow to fill it because they'd wanted me specifically. Timeline was 6 weeks. 6 weeks was completely workable. In the living room, I heard the television turn on. The next 6 weeks are the part of this story that people tend to misunderstand when I tell it. They assume it was cold, robotic, revenge executed with clinical detachment. It wasn't anything like that. It was genuinely sad. That's the most honest word I have for it. Jordana and I didn't have a dramatic final confrontation. We didn't scream. We didn't say the cruelest things we could think of to see what they'd do. We had a slow, painful unraveling that lasted about 10 days, during which she tried twice to walk the Sunday conversation back, and I listened carefully both times and said very little. I wasn't punishing her with silence. I was, for the first time in months, actually listening to what wasn't being said. What wasn't being said was, "I choose you. I choose us over this." She never said it. On day 11, I told her I was accepting a job transfer to London, a great professional opportunity that had come up. I didn't mention I'd already turned it down once. That felt like a private fact that didn't belong in the conversation. She went quiet. Then she asked how long I'd known about it. "A few weeks," I said. Her expression shifted through several things in the space of about 3 seconds. "Is this because of our fight?" "It's because it's the right move professionally," I said. Which was true. It was also not the complete truth. But I had been offering her the complete truth for months, and the complete truth had apparently not been what this situation was built to receive. We ended things officially that weekend. It was quiet. She cried a little. I held her hand across the kitchen table and meant it sincerely when I said I hoped she was happy. I still mean it. Whatever was happening with Cormac, whatever she'd been searching for, whatever she needed that I wasn't providing, I genuinely hope she found it. Then I went to my desk and started researching neighborhoods in East and South London. I gave up my apartment in Belltown and put everything I owned into a 10 by 10 storage unit on Western Avenue near the waterfront. I spent my last 2 weeks in Seattle saying real goodbyes. My friend group was mostly tech adjacent, people I'd known since my early Amazon years before I moved to the Bellevue side. They took me to Smith on Capitol Hill on my second to last night for a proper send-off, the kind where everyone says they'll visit and about a third of them actually follow through. I had dinner with Patrice in Tacoma the night before my flight. She made the chicken piccata she's been making since I was 12, and we sat at her kitchen table on South 12th Street and talked for 4 solid hours. "Did you do the right thing?" she asked at some point near the end of the night. "About London?" "About all of it." I thought about it carefully. "Yeah," I said. "I think I did." "Good." She got up to cut the dessert she'd bought from a bakery on 6th Avenue. We talked about her garden plan for spring, about whether my cousin in Phoenix had actually figured his life out yet, and she did not make me feel guilty for leaving, which is one of the several reasons she is the finest person I know. I was at SeaTac by 6 in the morning. British Airways direct to Heathrow, 11 hours. Window Seat, a novel I'd been meaning to read for 8 months, and the specific exhausted lightness that comes from making a decision you've genuinely stopped second-guessing. I was somewhere over Greenland when my phone, still connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi, buzzed with a text notification from Jordana. "What are you doing this weekend?" I looked at the message, thought about the question, thought about the rainy Sunday afternoon in February, the almond croissants, the kitchen table. "You're absolutely right." I turned the camera around. Window seat, British Airways headrest visible, cloud layer filling the frame outside. I looked like a man with somewhere to be. I snapped the photo and sent it. No caption. Her reply came 11 minutes later. "Are you serious?" 2 words back. Dead serious. Then I put my phone in my jacket pocket, adjusted the window shade against the glare above Greenland, and fell asleep somewhere over Ireland. I want to tell you about London, because this story doesn't end at the airport, and it wouldn't be honest to let you think the ending was a selfie. Harwick met me at Canary Wharf on my second day in the city. He was exactly as I'd expected from his emails. Direct, brisk, genuinely brilliant, with the specific confidence of someone who's been solving hard problems so long, he's stopped finding them interesting unless they're extraordinarily hard. He walked me through the office, which occupied 2 floors of a building on Bank Street with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Thames. The space had the organized chaos of a technical team growing faster than its own infrastructure could keep up with. "You're building this from scratch," he said, standing at the window with his arms crossed. "I mean the whole technical backbone. The team's at 12 people now, and we need 35 by end of Q2. You're hiring, designing, architecting, all of it simultaneously." "Good," I said. "That's exactly what I came for." He looked at me sideways. "You turned this job down once." "I had different circumstances." "Circumstances change." "They do," I said, "especially when they need to." I found an apartment in Bermondsey, south of the river, on Tanner Street in a converted Victorian warehouse with exposed brick walls and windows that looked down at a row of independent restaurants and the weekend market 2 blocks east. The commute to Canary Wharf was 15 minutes on the Jubilee line. The apartment cost more than my Belltown place and was considerably smaller, and I liked it immediately and completely. My colleague Desmond Park became, within the first 2 weeks, my closest friend in the city. He was a Korean-British infrastructure engineer who had been at the London office since it launched 8 months prior, which meant he'd been carrying the technical responsibilities of 3 people for the better part of a year, and was both extremely sharp and visibly, palpably relieved that I had arrived. We went for pints after my first full week at the Grapes, a wood-paneled pub near the office on Narrow Street that had been in continuous operation since the 1700s, and felt like it. "The architect they were considering before you," Desmond said, turning his glass slowly on the bar, "backed out 6 weeks before the start date. Harwick had to run the technical decisions himself from November onward." He looked at me evenly. "Let's say I'm glad you're here." We built something genuinely good over the following months. Clean systems, properly designed, built to hold under the kind of load that exposes every shortcut you took in the first version. I assembled the team carefully, hiring for how people thought and asked questions as much as for pure technical skill. By month 4, we had a code base that didn't surprise us with its own behavior, and a team that trusted each other in the specific, functional way that good engineering teams need to. London itself did what London does, which is to say it resisted easy, love and rewarded patience. It is loud and cold and expensive and occasionally baffling and permanently magnificent. I walked everywhere I could manage. I learned the tube lines in my sleep. I found a coffee shop on Bermondsey Street run by a man named Alec who made an Americano that I became genuinely dependent on by week 3. I started running along the Thames in the mornings when the weather made it even remotely viable, which in London is less often than you'd expect. And I started cooking properly for the first time in years because Borough Market and the Bermondsey Saturday Market made it feel genuinely criminal not to. I was building a life, a real one, built to my own specifications, on foundations I had chosen myself. Jordana texted me one more time about 6 weeks after the airport photo. "I heard you actually moved to London." "I did," I replied. "Was any of this because of me?" I sat with that question for a while, because I believe in honesty more than I believe in strategy, and the honest answer was genuinely complicated. "The opportunity was always there," I wrote back. "I turned it down the first time because I wanted to make things work between us. When you said what you said on that Sunday, I understood for the first time that I'd been prioritizing a relationship that wasn't prioritizing me back, so I stopped declining the things that were actually good for me." She read the message. The read receipt appeared immediately. 3 hours passed. When she replied, she wrote, "I think I made a mistake." I read it twice. I thought about the kitchen table, the chicken pasta, the green wrap dress, the bakery on Eastlake Avenue East. "I think we both made mistakes," I wrote back, "and I think we both had to make them to understand what we actually needed. I hope you're genuinely doing well, Jordana. I mean that." She replied, "I hope you are too." That was the last time we spoke. Cormac moved back to Portland about 2 months after I left Seattle. A mutual friend mentioned it in passing, not as gossip, just as an update in conversation. Jordana was no longer part of my life, so whatever happened with Cormac was completely her business and had nothing to do with mine. I mention it only because it is a data point. I leave its interpretation entirely to you. Patrice came to visit London in July. We spent 4 days walking the city. She stood on Tower Bridge and took an amount of photographs that I'm not going to characterize because I would like to remain her favorite child. We had dinner one evening at an Italian restaurant on Bermondsey Street that Alec from the coffee shop had recommended with unusual conviction, and we talked the way we've always talked, about everything and nothing and everything again. Before she flew home, she stood in my kitchen on Tanner Street looking down at the street below through the warehouse windows. "You seem like yourself again," she said. That was exactly it. Not happy in the performed anxious way, not fine in the way people say fine when they're not. Myself. Recognizably, solidly, genuinely myself. "I am," I told her. She nodded once, the way she does when something is confirmed rather than merely stated, and went to finish packing her bag. "I'm still in London, 14 months now. The team is at 38 people. We shipped a major infrastructure project last quarter that Harwick described, with characteristic British economy as rather good, which from Harwick is approximately equivalent to a standing ovation. Desmond and I have a standing Thursday evening arrangement at the Grapes on Narrow Street that I expect to continue for as long as either of us remains in this city. I met someone 3 months ago. She works in data ethics at a policy organization near London Bridge, the kind of work that requires both technical literacy and genuine moral clarity, which is a difficult combination, and she carries it well. Her name is Clara. She has her own calendar, her own friendships, her own fully occupied life, And she has this way of listening that makes you feel like you're the most interesting problem she's encountered all week. We're taking it at whatever pace makes sense. There's no rush. That's, I've learned, the best kind of beginning. My personal take: the system reset. What hits me most about Eli's story is his logic. As a systems architect, he knows that if a foundation is faulty, the whole structure will eventually collapse. For months, he tried to fix a relationship where he was the only one invested, while Jordana was living a double life with her ex. The turning point wasn't a fight. It was when he simply said, "You're absolutely right." In that moment, he stopped arguing and started acting. He didn't just move to London, he chose himself. He realized that you can't build a future with someone who treats you like a backup plan. My takeaway is simple: don't beg for a seat at a table where you aren't valued. Sometimes the best way to fix the system is to leave it behind and start fresh. Eli didn't lose a partner. He gained a life built on his own terms. And that selfie from the airport? That wasn't revenge. It was freedom.